Now let's talk about our favorite boy, Shadow. He's, cool in this game. He acts like how you expect Shadow to act. And it was interesting how they brought him back to life. They had to think of something to do. And I think he's supposed to be a clone of the original Shadow. They had to find some kind of way to bring him back because the character was too popular. And it was cool. We were all just happy to see him alive. Speaking about being a Sonic fan at that time in the 2000s, that's what I think we all felt like. We're just happy to see him there, It almost didn't matter how he came back, but they still explained it. But here's my problem. They really didn't explain it. You had to figure that out as you played the game, which is annoying. It's just too... It's mysterious, but you can't have the entire game where you don't fucking know why Shadow's still alive. You can't just explain it in the final part of the damn game. It should have been explained in the middle, Like, why did we have to wait? That's too long of a wait. It's just absurd. And none of the characters talk about how he's still alive. None of them are perplexed why he's still alive. Rouge doesn't talk about it. Omega doesn't talk about it. Shadow doesn't talk about it. How come none of them are, discussing this? It's strange. Again, it feels like it's afraid to be complicated. Why, when Shadow comes back to life as a clone of himself in that room, why doesn't Shadow say out loud, and he's looking at his hands, why isn't Shadow saying, how am I still alive? What is this? Is this my body? Shit like that.
Tell me, Doctor, what was I doing? Asleep on that base? And what about my memory?
Your memory? What memory? You have no past to remember.
What? That blue hedgehog like me. What did the doctor say about my memory? And just who am I?
Again, that's such wasted potential. It could have been so cool and so badass, but instead, it was like a little badass, So another problem, and this is one of the biggest flaws, I think, in Heroes, is that cutscene, that one fucking cutscene, where Sonic and Shadow finally see each other again in Heroes. And you got the teams with them, and they meet at the forest or whatever. So the dialogue between Sonic and Shadow is very cool, and then we get to fight them. But where's the other dialogue? How come Sonic is not surprised to see Shadow still alive? How come none of them talk about it? Sonic doesn't mention it. Sonic's not surprised. Shadow is just like, why aren't they why aren't they talking about it? Why? It's just so generic and strange, and what? Come on, Shadow died. It was a big deal. These were complicated. They became complicated characters. Not super complex. It's Sonic, but they made them really more complicated, and it was really fucking cool. But the fantasy fan dialogue we can come up with for that scene is amazing. But we were robbed of it in the game. As the fans, we can come up with better dialogue than that. For Sonic to see Shadow again after he died and, the stuff they could discuss before they start fighting again, and none of it was said. What a waste. What a waste of... even when I was a teenager playing that game, early teenager, I was like, oh wow, okay, they're going to meet up. This is awesome. I felt so excited to first see that cutscene playing this game in order back in the old days, 2003. I was like, wow, okay, Sonic and Shadow, they're going to talk to each other about how is he still alive, and oh wow, oh, it's so cool. And no, I was disappointed even back then. This goes with this trend where a lot of these writers, they underestimate children, and they think children are so dumb, and they don't think children can understand the dialogue given here. It feels like the beginning of this kind of trend. What was wrong with before? You made it complex before. Fuck. So, Sonic X and Sonic Heroes came out the same year in 2003. Sonic X the anime. Sonic X also has a lot of really corny, kiddie stuff in it, and it's still a great show, but the problem is Chris Thorndike, and I don't dislike Chris Thorndike. I know most Sonic fans hate that character. The character was annoying, but I still liked the character, and the problem with Chris Thorndike is that, this ties into Sonic Heroes, so let me just keep going. It's not a tangent. I'll explain why. Chris Thorndike should have been cool, like how Ash Ketchum was in Pokemon. It didn't matter that he was 10 or 9 or whatever. he still could have had cool dialogue like Ash did, and Yugi and Yu-Gi-Oh! But he didn't. He acted so, I don't know, lame. And that was the problem with Chris Thorndike. I wasn't against his character, though. It's just the way he spoke and sometimes, and it was just like, come on. Like, Chris Thorndike could have been this really cool Sonic character, but no. So my point is, it feels like 2003 was like the beginning of when they were changing the tone of Sonic to be more kiddie-ish, and it was really annoying at times. Think about it. 2003, you got Sonic X and Sonic Heroes, and both have this kiddie-ish vibe to them, and it was different. It seemed like Sega made Sonic more serious in the Dreamcast era because they figured that most of the people playing the Dreamcast were adults that grew up with Sonic in the 90s because they realized that the Dreamcast was failing, so I think they thought that only adults were going to buy Sonic Adventure 2 on the Dreamcast, so they decided to make it as adult as they could for a Sonic game. And it's sad because that shouldn't have been the only reason why it was this serious. It could have continued to be that way after the Dreamcast era. They did make it a little more serious later with Shadow the Hedgehog in 2005 and Sonic 06, but still, I don't understand why, like, what happened here. Yeah, confusing and mistakes everywhere.